Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Acting Secretary, good to see you.
Hello, Representative.
Bet it's different on that side of the table.
I always said it wasn't fair. In the Senate, staff's never allowed to ask questions.
Oh, yeah.
In the House, they are. And I thought since I'm on this side of the table now, I should have had that opportunity at least once.
Very good. So, obviously, this is our last day for budget hearings, and I had a number of questions I've asked that I really didn't get answers to. So, I'm going to start drilling down on them a little bit. Number one, PlanCON, the administration is calling on a moratorium and flatlining the funding. What's the end goal for the administration on PlanCON specifically?
There are many things, as you know, in a very complex, detailed funding plan that we have been very prescriptive about. There are, though, an equal number of things that we haven't been prescriptive about. As you know, we've had a moratorium on new PlanCON approvals that was relaxed modestly, I guess, in the current year, you would say. But essentially, we've had a moratorium that has now stretched several years and created a significant backlog.
So we currently have a moratorium?
We currently relaxed that moratorium in the current fiscal year, but only modestly.
How? What authorized that? Because it expired.
We put a small exception in place for the current year that lifted that moratorium slightly. We would propose putting that moratorium back in place in the legislation.
Hold on, I'm confused. The moratorium was put in place through legislative action. It expired at the end of fiscal year and was not brought up again. How do we have a moratorium?
Again, we have a moratorium. The suggestion we would make is to put the moratorium back in place.
So we don't have a moratorium?
One more time, we have a moratorium that theoretically we have lifted.
So we have a theoretical moratorium.
But we haven't provided significant new funding that would fund a significant amount of new projects in the current fiscal year. We need to have a conversation with the members of the General Assembly to talk about how we are going to address school construction needs going forward. If we want to begin a much more aggressive approach to deal with that backlog going forward, then we have to have an honest conversation about committing significant new resources to increase the state's reimbursement for school construction projects. Right now, we haven't done that in the current year budget.
So the administration supports putting new dollars into PlanCON?
The administration supports putting a moratorium back in place so that we can have an honest conversation, so that we don't create a false impression to school districts that we're going to immediately begin significantly increasing the state's commitment for school construction while not appropriating the resources to fund it.
So I was just looking for Charles Zogby to see if he's in this room. I don't see. Okay. Moving on. H63 of the governor's budget booklet, there's 3 footnotes, A, B, and C, and it covers the property tax relief reserve account. 1314, the balance is $42.7 million, 1415, $21.1 million, and 1516 is estimated to be a balance of $1.4 million, $4.5 million. Will this allocation be reduced, will the property tax from slot revenue be reduced next year if that reserve account is at 0 or less?
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, we transfer more than $2.1 billion into the property tax relief fund in a reserve to make payments then in the following fiscal year.
But your property tax relief is predicated on PIT money and slot revenue, correct?
It is
$600 million?
It is predicated on the receipt of both.
Will $600 be available next year, the next fiscal year, with the reserve count down to $1.4 million?
Again, our budget provides a reserve of $2.1 billion. You can't ignore the transfer of funds into the property tax relief fund that are part of the proposed budget plan for the 15-16 fiscal year.
Well, I get that, but the issue is the slot revenue. Will slot revenue be there? The $600 million, will it be less? Will it be more?
The slot revenue at $600 million is a very modest component of the.
But will it be there?
We assume.
Will it be there?
Again, we assume the continuing receipt of slot revenue. It
600 be there.
It will come
down to 1.4. Will it be there?
Yes, it will be there.
Definitely.
Yes.
All right. So page A112 of the governor's budget has PIT restricted revenue at $2.14 billion. Now, you just testified that the PIT increase will be $2.4 billion. What happens to that extra $240 million?
Well, again, the PIT increase is part of a total revenue package. As I had stated earlier.
I get that. I get it's a total, but where does that money go? You raise it by 2.4, you put 2.1 in. Where does that extra money go?
It goes to the general fund.
So that's in general fund. So that's a tax increase.
It is a tax increase, yes.
Okay. And the 2.41 on the chart gets carried over the next year. Additional $4.5 million is put in. Total funds available are $6.7 billion, and you're paying out $3.666 billion, which includes $420 million for the rent rebate, correct?
Approximately, yes. A little more than that, but
Okay.
you're close.
Ending balance is $3 billion, so you keep $3 billion into that account. Why not pay out that $3 billion? Why does government have to sit on $3 billion of taxpayers' dollars?
Well, when you were already, when you started your line of questions, talking about the spend down of the reserve fund currently from the gaming receipts, obviously we're talking about a much more ambitious property tax relief plan that we're providing for school districts that we want to guarantee to school districts will always be there. We can't see our crystal ball clear enough to know that some economic downturn isn't going to confront us in future years.
Because that's interesting, because in
we
18-19 you decrease the amount. You go down to 3666 to 3631.
We believe strongly.
Are you projecting that your PIT increase will hurt the economy?
We believe strongly.
And less revenues will be in?
We believe strongly that if we don't maintain a substantial multi-billion-dollar balance in that reserve fund, that we can't clearly make the commitment to school district that those funds will always be there. So that's why we've funded the plan in a very responsible way that provides a substantial fund balance. We carry over that fund balance in every succeeding fiscal year. And in addition to the fund balance that you see there, if you look below the line on the general fund side, you see a future growing unallocated fund balance for the general fund assumptions in the out-year growth cycles as well, to again provide some assurance that, again, we won't face the structural budget challenges that we do in the current fiscal year.
So one last point. In your line of questioning with the chairman, you said that we're going to get a 50% reduction in homestead. Current residential property taxes are about $8.8 billion. If you remove the slot revenue that's already allocated, you're distributing about $3.2 billion out of $8.8 billion, which is about 36%. So how do you go from the 36% total distribution to over 50%? And I know how you're going to get there. You get 100, I get 0, the middle is 50. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The answer to your question, since you asked one, is that the numbers that you state, first of all, are high, I believe, for total residential taxes collected. But those include,
those are your numbers.
But those include,
those are your numbers.
Those include rental receipts as well as homeowner. Those are residential, total residential property taxes. Includes property taxes that renters pay as well as homeowners. We're talking about the tax relief that will be received by the average homeowner.